My presentation today deals with a particular hallucinogenic, the Datura, a nightshade. Early South Asian specimen had reached the Mediterranean probably already in the 12th century, though the plant had received attention by European physicians and botanists only by the 16th century. The reason for this newfound interest lay likely in the parallel introduction of Datura specimen from South America and India during the European expansion of the 16th century. Instead of talking about the botanical dispersion of the Datura, I will focus on narratives accompanying them. I will show how European sources made claims about the abuse of Datura in India, which are going back to older European stories about witchcraft. These traveling narratives, I argue, represented India as a place of transgressive intoxication and sexuality in opposition to Europe as a space of moderation during the 16th and 17th centuries. Let me delve right into some primary sources to show you what I mean. In 1666, the courtly scholar Adam Olearius published a catalogue of the Cabinet of Curiosities at Castle Gottorf, the residency of the Duke of Schleswig-Holstein-Gottorf in northern contemporary Germany. Olearius had been the person responsible for the establishment of the Cabinet of Curiosities in 1651. Part of the cabinet was a garden in which rare plants were cultivated and which contained a specimen of the Datura. In the printed catalogue from 1666, he describes the Datura like this. The seed is abused by two kinds of people in India, namely by the lustful women and then by the thieves or disloyal servants in the house, because he whom the seed Datura has been given into the food or drink is bereaved of his mind for several hours, so that, though he's awake, he knows of nothing. Meanwhile, the women as well as the thieves can have their delight and will in presence of the man, and when the man awakes, he believes he only had a sweet sleep. Olearius describes a plant with hallucinogenic properties which deprives the consumer of its mental capacities. Thieves, domestics, and women in India supposedly use it to poison the foods and drinks of men who are stylized as abolic victims. Meanwhile, the perpetrators may conduct transgressions like thievery or extramarital sexuality. This passage about the Datura describes a common notion about the abuse of substances by Indians in 17th century European sources. These sources at times even accused Indian wives of murder. In the specific case of the Datura, we can, however, see that it is not used as a murderous substance, but as an intoxicant. It is the human use of this plant which frames it as a dangerous substance, whereby the plant itself only induces sleep, according to Olearius. The intentional abusive administration behind the victim's back is the act which defiles the victim's body by putting it out of action. Further, it is the act which defiles the moral structure of marriage. The emphasis on the sexual desires of the Indian wife implies a danger to a monogamous comprehension of marriage. The breaking of the sacrament of marriage, embedded in the contemporaneous Christian worldview, defiles both husband and wife on a religious and moral level. Female sexuality appears as dangerous and negative, threatening the morals of the household. Similarly, the domestic's abuse of the Datura poses a danger to the moral structure of the household. Generally, the early modern European household was imagined as a moral space in need of protection. As a microcosm, it reflected the macrocosm of society at large. Domestics also participated in this moral space. Insofar, Olearius' depiction of the Indian household presents an antithesis to the European household. This threatening imaginary of India and of the Datura also endangers Europe, however. Olearius tells us that the courtly gardener, Gabriel Tutter, cultivates the hallucinogenic in Gottorf, after which he concludes. However, if it has the potency and effect as in India, would have to be tested, but would not be good for our country. Olearius' imagination about the danger of Indian intoxicants quite concretely projects the same threat on Gottorf, which stays safe because of Olearius' ability to restrain himself. The discourse about the Datura found in the Gottorf Cabinet Catalogue is an example of notions of alterity in the European perspectives on India. It draws from a longer history, however. Olearius tells us about the sources of information on the Datura, which are the following. Garcia, the author's botanical from 1563, Cristóvão da Costa's Botanical from 1578, Jan Huygen van Linschoten's Travelogue from 1596, Johann Albrecht von Mandelloh's Travelogue from 1658, Jürgen Andersen's Travelogue published only in 1669, and a specimen of the Datura in the Gottorf Gardens. In total, Olearius cites 6 sources of his knowledge, which he found worthwhile mentioning. Due to time restrictions, I will not be able to discuss each of them. Rather, I will focus on the main Datura narratives by examining Garcia da Orta's and Cristóvão da Costa's botanicals further. Da Orta's text is not only the oldest one on the list, but also influenced the other written sources. Da Costa wrote his botanical Tratados de las Drogas in response to da Orta's botanical Coloquios dos Simples Drogas. Linschoten possessed a copy of da Orta's Coloquios and used it while he penned his travelogue. And Olearius had edited and published Mandelfloh's and Andersen's travelogue after he had read da Orta. However, indications within the text suggest that Olearius did not use a Portuguese original of da Orta's botanical, but the botanical compilation Exoticorum Libri Decem by the Dutch naturalist Carolus Clusius from 1605. Garcia da Orta's botanical had been the first Western treatise on Indian flora printed in India, that is in Goa. Because da Orta's Coloquios had been printed far away, the Portuguese original received little attention in Europe. Only when the Dutch naturalist Carolus Clusius discovered the Coloquios during a trip to the Iberian Peninsula, it came to glory. Clusius published a Latin translation in 1567. This work, which Clusius attributed to da Orta, actually was a complete revision of the Coloquios. Clusius didn't follow the original structure, and he also amended and changed the contents. This book went through 5 editions and became a widespread reference work on Indian flora in Europe. In 1605, Clusius published a compilation of various treatises on extra-European botany in Latin, the aforementioned Exoticorum Libri Decem. This compilation also contained Clusius' Latin versions of da Orta's Coloquios and da Costa's Tractado. Adam Olearius used this latest version when he cited Garcia da Orta. The longer passage in the Datura in the Clusius edition also refers to its consumption and reads like this. It grows in Malabar. This flower or its seed is injected by thieves into the meals of those whom they want to plunder, for they become numb in their mind in a certain way. However, many obtain this medicine and they scatter it in laughter, with great liberty allowing that they willingly being plundered. This alienation of the mind lasts without a doubt for the duration of 24 hours. Like Olearius, Clusius refers to the poisoning of meals by Datura, but provides a more precise location of this plant in India, the Malabar coast. He also refers to the deceit of the thieves who grow rich via the abuse of the Datura. The text then continues with describing a cure for the effects of the Datura, which consists of vomiting, clusters, cupping therapy, and bleeding. Absent in Clusius' edition of da Orta's treatise is the reference to female members of the household, whom Olearius mentioned. These appear in Clusius' translation of Cristóvão da Costa's text, however. The evil custom has grown strong among the unchaste women that they provide half a drachma of the seed rubbed into a powder under wine or another substance, which pleases more. The miserable one who drinks this remains a long and considerable time as if having become numb in the mind, either laughing or crying, or sleeping, for the most part even speaking and answering to those, so that you now and then even believe that he is provided with a sane mind, even if he may not be in control of his mind, and he does not recognize him with whom he conveys the conversations, and he may be completely heedless of the conversation he has had after he returns to himself. In this light, Olearius' claim appears as a conflation of both da Orta's and da Costa's writings. The abuse of the Datura by thieves appears in Clusius da Orta, the one of the women appears in Clusius da Costa. Olearius was quite selective about the information he extracted from the Clusius compilation, however. Neither does he follow da Orta's or da Costa's advice on cures for the intoxication, nor does he provide da Costa's information on how to use the Datura against herpes. What stayed in Olearius It's only that information which creates India as a place of danger, in which one might be poisoned with intoxicants. In all three sources, this act of poisoning poses a transgression of morals. The author's Portuguese original shows some considerable difference to Clusius' translation, however. It has been written as a dialogue between the author and other people, telling us the following about the Datura. The domestic entries. The domestic. Please, sir, a negress of the house gave my mistress Datura to drink, then took her key and the jewels she had on her neck and in a box, and ran away with another negro. And please excuse the language here. The author then continues in telling us that the mistress, a certain Paula de Andrade, was a child of a Portuguese and an Indian parent. He also ascertains that the users of the Datura always love and are very liberal, for they let people take such of their jewels as they choose, and only love or speak very little, and that not to the purpose, so that the robber has only to give this medicine and the food, and the effect lasts 24 hours. Finally, the author is able to relieve Paula de Andrade by treating her with an emetic and a clister. Meanwhile, the stealing domestic is caught and questioned. In the author, the domestic, the thief, and the woman are one person, though the story of the unfaithful wife doesn't appear here. It does, however, in the original treatise of Cristóvão da Costa in Spanish. Due to time restrictions, I will not be able to quote this now, though it is quite similar to the Clusius version quoted earlier. In the original, the author, it is an Indian domestic identifiable by her skin color, which commits the transgression. The victim has a mixed Portuguese-Indian parentage, and it is Garcia, the author, as the Portuguese physician, who can remedy the effects of the Datura, while the Portuguese colonial rule takes hold of the fleeing domestic. Intoxication here appears as something Indian, which transgresses the moral boundaries and endangers the physical and economic well-being. This danger pertains not only to Indian society. In the moment of hybridization, the danger becomes real to Portuguese society as well. Paula de Andrade, with the hybrid parentage, is representative of the danger to her Portuguese descent, as well as to her Indian descent. It is the Portuguese physician's cure and the Portuguese crown's policing which returns order. The underlying representations of alterity in the Coloquios display India as a space of dangerous intoxication, which threatens Europeans in the moment of hybridization, which can be brought under control through European intervention. Certainly, the author's text offers a deeply prejudiced worldview. The author and the Costa knew the writings of Andrés de Laguna, a Spanish physician in the first half of the 16th century, who had served under Emperor Charles V and the Spanish King Philip II. In 1555, Laguna published a commentary on Dioscorides, which both the author and da Costa had read. Neither references Laguna in their entries on the Datura, but it seems unlikely that they missed Laguna's description of the plants Tramonia, which we may identify with the Datura. In his book, Laguna reports about his experiences with the Datura as the city physician of Metz in 1545, when he treated the Duke of Nancy, who had been bewitched. When the house of the offenders, a married couple, had been searched, an ointment based on Datura was found. Laguna decided to apply the ointment to the wife, calling her a witch, who immediately fell into a deep sleep, from which she awoke only 36 hours later. Questioning her, she believed that she had committed to a deal with the devil. The married woman states that she had put on the horns on her husband and has had sexual intercourse with a younger man during her intoxication. From this experiment, Laguna draws the following conclusion. From all this, we may infer that all that those wretched witches do and say is caused by potions and ointments which so corrupt their memory and their imagination that they create their own woes, for they firmly believe when awake all that they have dreamed when asleep. An additional important argument is that all those women who carried out these infamous practices confessed with one voice that they had on many occasions copulated with the devil. In the following, Laguna denies the direct influence of the devil, but suggests that he can make use of natural causes to lure people. Such natural causes included the effect of the Datura, which humans could consume to commit to the devil. In Laguna's book, the Datura features as an ingredient in ointments and potions, which is prepared for sexual transgression of the devil, though there is no claim about thieves and domestics. Similar like in the Costa, the sexual transgression also insinuates that the Datura ointment is used for fulfilling the desires for extramarital sexuality. While this happens within a hallucination, the underlying deal with the devil reaffirms the belief in a religious and moral transgression by the woman. The Datura ointment serves as the physical component helping to induce this deal. The husband remains the victim of the marital and religious transgression in Laguna's story. This is not unlike the Costa's description, though in Laguna, the woman is under the influence of the Datura. Laguna presents a common trope about early modern narratives about witches who supposedly used intoxicants and poisons during their interactions with the devil. By tracing the connection between the quoted sources, we can also see how such narratives from Europe were projected on India. In Laguna, we perceive the Datura as an ingredient in witches' ointments and potions, which create hallucinations of marital infidelity and are connected to the workings of the Christian devil. A few years later, we find a similar sexual transgression in Cristóvão's Costa's treatise, though without a reference to the devil. Instead, the transgression happens through the poisoning of consumables. We also find an economic and moral transgression. 2 minutes, yeah. Thank you. And moral transgression in the Orta's original, here committed by domestics. Finally, via the addition by Clusius, both narratives in the Orta and the Costa found entrance into the writings of Adam Olearius. During the travels of these narratives, the Datura remains a potent hallucinogenic, but the devilish component becomes less pronounced. Rather, the human moral transgression is emphasized. Pompa Banerjee has shown that tales about wives poisoning their husbands have been common in early modern European narratives about India, and those hardly related to actual events. As per her, the criminal records of the Mughal Empire show not a single case of a woman poisoning her husband. Nor do non-European travelers to India report a narrative similar to those in the European tradition. Even the Indian religious texts like the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata feature no prominent stories about wives as poisoners. The only prominent use of the Datura in the Indian context I'm aware of is the worship of the Hindu god Shiva, which is not mentioned in the European primary sources. Hence, the narrative about the abuse of the Datura discussed in my paper appears as a projection of European witchcraft stories in India. This transgression is projected on the Indian Eastern-European population, which is represented as an increasing threat. The culprits in the narratives about India are women. The male authors of the sources depict female sexuality as a source of defilement of European moral norms. European male moderation appears as the counterpoint, which prevents the same negative effects on the Gottorf population or remedies it through the workings of Garcia de Orta and Portuguese colonial rule. Such transgressions in India can only with difficulty be avoided by the European population, though, as the Datura is used not only as a voluntary intoxicant, but mixed into food and drink. The misogynistic and culturally prejudiced narratives create an imagination of India as a space of transgressive intoxication, sexuality, and moral depravity. The Datura narrative therefore offers a case study of how early modern Europeans established cultural hierarchies in their encounter with the Indian natural world, which served to project longer-lasting prejudices about intoxicants. Thank you.